Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and today I am going to be doing a pre-NBA draft video talking a little bit about the teams that are drafting in the lottery and some of the players that are high up in the draft order. What I'm going to be doing is going through the top 10 picks and predicting who I think will go where and why I think they'll go there and what the team needs are and how the player I've chosen for my mock draft can fit those team needs. And that's about what I'm going to do. I figured I ought to do a video because it's the day before the draft, and why not? Alright, so getting into it, the team with the number 1 pick is the Phoenix Suns. I think this is pretty cut and dry. I have them getting DeAndre Ayton, number 1 overall, the guy that's been talked about for a while now. I think it's not really controversial at all or contested that he'll be the number 1 pick. He, in college, averaged 20 points a game and 12 rebounds. Blue chip prospect, really good, consensus number 1 pick. I have been likening him to basically a Dwight Howard with a jumper, which I think is a pretty fair comparison. Or Joel Embiid is another comparison, who I think is essentially Dwight Howard with a jumper. The only thing that Ayton doesn't have going for him is that he's not a good defender. And because of that, I don't think he'll be as good as a Joel Embiid. I think he might be more of the level of player, sort of like Karl Anthony Towns, where he is, of course, very, very talented. But there still are some holes in his game, and that he does need to develop a defensive game. But besides that, I think he can develop that eventually, and he will be a great player. So, DeAndre Ayton, number 1 pick. Picking number 2 is the Sacramento Kings, and for number 2, I have them picking Marvin Bagley, who went to Duke, and he averaged 21 points a game and 11 rebounds at Duke. And a lot of people think that maybe Luka Doncic would go number 2, or even Michael Porter has been talked about going number 2 as a sort of a stretch that they would reach for him. But I think that Marvin Bagley makes the most sense for them. I don't really want them to get Luka Doncic because he handles the ball a ton, and they just got De'Aaron Fox, and I feel like getting another ball handler will limit his growth as the primary point guard. And there really aren't any great small forwards in this draft that I feel like they could get this early without stretching for them. So Michael Porter Jr. would be the only choice for a small forward, but that'd be reaching a bit. So let's just stick to the idea that they're picking number 2 and not trading down, and I'd have them picking Marvin Bagley. He play a power forward in the NBA, maybe a little bit of a tweener. I see him basically as like a better Lamar Odom, about 6'10", can shoot it a little bit, but primarily plays on the inside. Can handle the ball a little bit, but primarily, as I said, an interior player. The Kings have a lot of post players right now. Zach Randolph, Skal, I don't know how to say his name, Labissiere, I think. Skal Labissiere, Zach Randolph, Willie Cauley-Stein. Those are their main post guys, but I feel like if you consider that Randolph will only be there for maybe 1 more year, Marvin Bagley will have plenty of time to shine. I think that he may even start over Randolph this year. We could see that. I'm not entirely sure. Skal Labissiere, I think, is just a backup. I don't think that he's starting caliber, so I don't see any problem with slotting Marvin Bagley in over him at power forward next to Willie Cauley-Stein as a starting center. Or if you wanted to start Labissiere at the center, you could do that too, but I like Willie Cauley-Stein better. So yeah, that's how I feel about Bagley. I feel like he'd really improve them. He'd give them a definitive number 1 option, I think. This last year they had an odd combination of pieces where they had Zach Randolph, who had the ability to be a number 1 option in maybe like in his best year, but was not anymore. You had De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, guys that really aren't number 1 options, but we're trying to fill that void. Whereas I feel if Marvin Bagley comes to the team, people can recognize him as the definitive number 1 option for the team. So in that respect, I really like him on the team a lot. Number 3, the Hawks are picking, and I have them taking Luka Doncic from the EuroLeague. This last year in the EuroLeague, he averaged 15 points a game, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists, which is pretty good. I don't really know what to think of this guy. You know, some people love him, and some people are very indifferent about him and think it's not a big loss if you don't get him. But a lot of people are really hyped on him, and some people have said he's by far the most talented person in the draft. A 6'8" guy. He handles the ball and can play point guard, but I feel like in the NBA he might translate to more of a shooting guard. I see him maybe being a Manu Ginobili type. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but who knows? But I've heard a lot of steam that the Hawks want to get him, so I have the Hawks picking him up at number 3. And I think that they could use him, especially if the whole Dennis Schroeder trade idea continues to grow. Maybe I'll do a video about that another time, but Dennis Schroeder is basically pretty unhappy in Atlanta and has wanted to be traded for, you know, maybe even the last year, but definitely the last couple of months. And if they do trade him, then for sure Doncic makes sense because they'll need a primary ball handler. And honestly, people are really high on John Collins in Atlanta, but I think that's just because they're backing their own team. I'm not that high on him personally. I think he'll be a serviceable NBA player, but not a star by any means. Just a good average starter. But I think that Doncic really would give him some firepower. Next, the Grizzlies are picking, and as I said earlier, I'm going to act as if none of these teams are going to trade their pick, which a lot of people think that the Grizzlies will trade down because they don't need a pick this high. But if they do stay where they are, I have them taking Jaren Jackson Jr. The main reason I don't have them taking Mo Bamba is because he said he didn't want to play for them, and I don't think that they'd take a guy who has said he doesn't want to play for them. Sort of a situation like how the Jazz didn't take Dominique Wilkins when they could have drafted him because he just said he refused to play in Utah, so they felt compelled to skip him in the draft, which is a huge mistake, obviously. But I have them taking Jaren Jackson here, who's, I think, the next best player after Mo Bamba. Jaren Jackson went to Michigan State and averaged 11 points and, 6 rebounds a game, which is pretty decent. I don't know what I think of Jaren Jackson. I think if I had to pick one guy to be the bust in this draft, I'd pick Jaren Jackson. Not because I think that he doesn't have the talent, just because I think that he could just get lost in the shuffle a bit in Memphis. I mean, I don't necessarily think that, but I just think that there's a possibility that it happens. I think that he could be sort of an Anthony Randolph type, where Anthony Randolph was taken like 6th or 7th overall in the draft back in his year, like 2008 or 2007. And everyone thought, like, man, this guy could be the next thing. And everyone was just waiting and waiting and waiting for him to fully form, and he just never did. I could see that being Jaren Jackson. I wish the best for him. I obviously don't want him to have a bad career. I want him to have a very good, successful career. I just could see it happening. But Memphis does really need a power forward, so he could fit into that slot really well and fill a need for them very well. The next team picking is the Mavericks, who I have taking Mo Bamba out of the University of Texas. I like this guy a lot. A lot of people have said he's the next Rudy Gobert, which would be a great fit for the Mavs. They really need a center. I don't really like any of their options right now between Dwight Powell, and their other big guy center. What's his last name? I can't remember it, but he's obviously not that good if he's pretty forgettable. And I don't think that they're going to retain Nerlens Noel, so I think that picking Mo Bamba would really work well. And the thing about Mo is that if you've watched any of his workouts, they're really impressive. And he has these clips where he just drains like 15 threes in a row or 10 threes in a row. And everyone was thinking at that time, wow, he's Rudy Gobert with a three-point shot, which would be pretty amazing. But I don't know. We're going to have to just wait and see. Because making three-pointers in an empty gym is one thing. Being an NBA offensive force is another. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but in 2003, there was a guy who had really impressive pre-draft workouts, and his name was Darko Milicic, and everyone said, man, he's the next thing. He's the next Dirk Nowitzki. But newsflash, he was one of the biggest busts in NBA history. So a pre-draft workout doesn't really mean that much, honestly. but if you have a good pre-draft workout, it's obviously better than having a bad one. But I like Mo Bamba a lot. I think he'll be a defensive force. He's got an enormous wingspan. I think it's 7'7", and he could be a blocks master if he gets to the league. He averaged 13 and 11 at Texas. I don't know if I mentioned that. 13 points a game, 11 rebounds. Very impressive guy. The next team on here who will be picking 6th in the draft is the Orlando Magic. And the guy I have them picking is Trae Young. Now, this may be a little bit high, you might think. You might totally disagree with this, and you think to yourself, Trae Young shouldn't even be drafted in the NBA. But I have him going to the Magic here. They really need a nice young point guard. They currently have DJ Augustin as their starting point guard, who is getting a little bit older. This would be his 11th year in the NBA starting next year. He's not bad by any means. DJ Augustin is just your definition of like an average NBA player. Like, is he bad? No. Is he good? No. He's just right there in the middle. He can fill a gap if you... He's like a really good backup, but not a good starter. And that's really the position that they need. I don't think they'd want a small forward because they just drafted Jonathan Isaac last year, and they already had Jonathan Simmons. They don't need a shooting guard because they have Fournier. They don't need a center or a power forward because they have Vucevic and Gordon. And unless they're going to trade any of those guys, the only position left to be filled is point guard, which Trae Young can fill. Now, you've probably heard a lot of the things that a lot of people said about Trae Young. By the way, Trae Young played for Oklahoma and averaged 27 points a game and 9 assists a game. Very good. Reminded a lot of people of Steph Curry and Jimmer Fredette in college. And obviously, you have the spectrum there. Some people liken him to Steph Curry. Some people liken him to Jimmer Fredette. He could be a boom or bust player. ESPN said that he had the highest bust potential of any player in the draft, which I think is definitely true. He's 6'4", but he is very skinny. I think he's under 200 pounds. Lots of people think that he just won't be able to handle NBA offensive players. He will be terrible at guarding, or just that he'll be too small and get pushed around by NBA players. I do think that could happen. Some people think his release is too slow and that he'll be blocked a lot. But I think he'll fare all right. I think he'll be a decent NBA player. I think that his floor is sort of like a Tyus Jones. Like, Tyus Jones was a big deal coming out of college, but not everyone was sold on him. He was a late first-round pick, and now he's just a backup on the Timberwolves. I could see him becoming a player like that, or I don't know. I just see him as like that is his floor, and his ceiling is probably not as good as Steph. Maybe his ceiling would be like early Steph before the 2014 explosion, maybe like around 20 points a game, if he like maxes out as a player. I don't see him becoming a Steph-like superstar at all, but he could be a good like borderline all-star type of player. He will have to really clean up on the turnovers though, and his ball handling. He's going to really have to tighten his handle, because right now he can be a bit sloppy with it at times and can take some really bad shots. He's going to really have to become more disciplined if he's going to want to succeed in the NBA. All right, next is the Bulls picking at 7. You know, when I look at their team, they have Chris Dunn at point guard, who's a promising young guy. They have LaVine at shooting guard, promising young guy. Denzel Valentine and Justin Holiday at small forward, who are really average to below average, mediocre players. At power forward and center, you have a platoon of Robin Lopez, Bobby Portis, and Lauri Markkanen, so I don't think that they really need any help down low. So I think the clear hole is at small forward, and because of that, I have them drafting Mikal Bridges out of Villanova, two-time champ at Villanova. He averaged, 18 points a game and 5 assists a game in college, or 5 rebounds, I think both. So yeah, I just really like him at small, sliding in there at small forward. He's 6'7", around 210. If he bulks up a little bit, maybe gets up to 220, 230, he'd be great. He's one of these guys that really succeeded in college, but you just don't know if it'll necessarily translate to the NBA. I see him not in a play style way, but just in a success way, being similar to JJ Redick in that he'll be a really good role player on a team. He will not be a star of a team, but he could be a good starter on a playoff contending team like JJ Redick is. Not that he'll be a spot up shooter like JJ, just that he'll be filling a similar level of importance on the team. If that makes sense. Next team picking will be the Cleveland Cavaliers at 8 with the Brooklyn Nets pick. I have them taking Colin Sexton out of Alabama, who last year averaged 19 points a game, 4 rebounds, 4 assists a game. I like Colin Sexton a lot. I think he'd be really good for the Cavs. I thought about having them take Wendell Carter here, but I thought, they have a lot of low post players too if they don't trade anybody. They'll have Kevin Love, Tristan Thompson, Larry Nance Jr., Jeff Green, all power forwards or centers. I think adding Wendell Carter would just muddle up the post. So I think that for them, it'll be best to take Colin Sexton at point guard. I also thought about putting Michael Porter in here too, but I think that if LeBron comes back, he wouldn't want to deal with an injury risk like Michael Porter, so Colin Sexton is a safe pick. You got George Hill, who is the current point guard, and Jordan Clarkson, but both can play two guard if you want to have them and Sexton in the game at the same time. Both have in the past. I think Clarkson's actually a better shooting guard because he's more of a scorer than a distributor, and I think that Sexton has the ability to be both. So if you have Sexton as your point guard and George Hill as your off guard, or Clarkson as your off guard, you're not really losing any ball distribution. So I think that he could be a good fit. A nice young player, could possibly entice LeBron to stay. Not for sure. I don't think that he's going to be strong enough to keep LeBron, but it would be a step in the right direction. The next team picking in this draft is the Knicks, and I have them taking Michael Porter Jr. out of Missouri, who only played 3 games last year during the regular season and averaged 10 points a game and 7 rebounds as a small forward. He's 6'8". The thing about him is the injuries. He's very much like Greg Oden, I think. Has all the potential in the world. Just if he can stay healthy, he'll be really good. Sort of in the vein of Joel Embiid as well. I think that he has the talent. He showed it in high school. He showed it a little bit in college. Obviously not much. He's a huge risk to take him. But I think that the Knicks would be okay with it because next year is essentially a lost year for them in that Porzingis might be out the entire year and they don't really have much, so it'll be a rebuilding year. So I think if they take a guy who's a risk in the draft, it'll be okay because they'll finish with a really bad record then and get a high draft pick. Because honestly, what would be the point of finishing with like 30 wins next year if they just play their asses off and do really well? What would be the point? Because they would just end up with around the pick they have now, like 8 or 9, which I don't think helps them that much going forward. But if they pick Michael Porter and let's say he doesn't play much at all next year, or maybe he plays like half the season or even the whole season, honestly, it's going to take a while for him to adjust to the NBA, so I think it wouldn't be that bad if he went to the Knicks because they're not necessarily looking to be a winner next year, and he would have time to recover and not feel pressure. If he was in Cleveland, he'd feel a ton of pressure to be back right away and be really good. But I think going to the Knicks would be a comfortable position for him. The next team I have picking at number 10, who will be rounding it out here, will be the 76ers, who have this pick from a trade. I have them taking a big, actually, which might be a little surprising to some people who think that they have a crowded interior. I have them taking Wendell Carter Jr., and he went to Duke last year as a freshman and averaged 14 points a game and 9 rebounds as a second option to Marvin Bagley. I like him a lot. He can stretch it from 3, which most people don't know. He shot 41% from the 3-point line last year. He only took about 1.5 a game on average, but still he shot good from 3, which is something. I don't know if that 3-point shot would translate to the NBA, which is a little bit farther back for 3, and obviously it's just harder in general. But the sign that he did in college is good. I think that he'll primarily play on the inside, obviously. I think for the Knicks, I think he could play power forward, or not the Knicks, excuse me, the 76ers. I think he could play power forward. He did a little bit of power forward in college. On his player profile, it says he's a power forward / center. So you could slot a lineup in if, let's say, no trades happen or no free agents are signed, which is possible. You could have a lineup of Simmons at point guard, Redick at shooting guard, Covington at small forward, Saric or Carter at the 4 and Embiid at the 5, or you could have if you have Saric start, you could have Carter come in for Embiid and then have Embiid come in for Saric and slide Carter to a power forward when he's in the game with Embiid. I think it would work fine. Embiid can pop it from 3, so there's some spacing there. And if Carter works on his 3, they'll have 2 bigs that can shoot it from 3, along with Saric, who's a big who can shoot it from 3. So they'll have a little bit more spacing. So Simmons doesn't have to feel as much pressure to develop a jumper, even though Simmons really needs to develop a jumper, as we all know. But if you have a lineup like I just said, you have 4 shooters and Simmons, so you'll have spacing. So they don't have to feel bad about that. Simmons can continue to develop at point guard, which I think will be good for him because I think that they should really take advantage of that 6'10" point guard thing, like Magic on the Lakers. I think having an oversized point guard is a tremendous advantage over the other team. So yeah, I think that'd be really good for them. And the player I have on here that's not in the top 10, but who I think could go in the top 10, is Kevin Knox of Kentucky, who averaged 16 points a game and 5 rebounds a game last year. Really good player. I thought about putting him in for some other players in here, maybe over Mikal Bridges or Colin Sexton even, or Michael Porter. I think that once you get past 5 of Mo Bamba, the next 6 through 10 could honestly go in a number of different orders. And some of these players might not even be in the top 10, but this is just the order that I thought they'd go in. And I think you could easily sub in Kevin Knox for any of them. Teams can have really odd priorities when they draft, or they can be drafting for the purpose of trading. So you can never really know why a team picks a player. It could be for a number of reasons, but this is what I think will happen in the top 10, or what I think each team should do if they're thinking wisely. Let me know in the comments if you have any disagreements or agreements with me on what I've said, and I'd love to hear from you guys. Alright, hope you enjoyed the video, and have a good day. Bye.